Hey everyone, welcome back to Couple of Nerds Comic Cave. Today we're diving into an exciting new comic from our Traveler series, A Lizard Folk in Arnknoka, The Sacred Rock. We're here today with my co-host and partner in adventure, DM Eguile.
Hey all you nerds out there.
And joining us is our amazing guest artist, EntLynk.
Sorry.
She's here to give us a peek behind the scenes of her newest artwork for the series. We'll explore the festival grounds, and you'll sort of feel the suspense as Captain V reaches out to touch the mysterious sacred rock. Plus, we'll dive into some art challenges, new tools, and everything that makes this piece so dynamic.
I'm really excited to talk about this one.
Yeah, there's a ton to unpack. So let's get started on this journey to Arnknoka.
All right.
So obviously we want to start off by talking about how this looks, right? We always want to discuss what the piece actually looks like. And I love this first panel because at first it's just a wide shot of a giant boulder sticking out of the ground.
Boulder.
I love it because it's like this jagged sort of lightning rock that looks almost like a lightning bolt just got stuck in there after it got hurled from the heavens or something. But we also see Tobias sort of leading the group up to the rock and explaining a little bit of like why it's important, why the champions are the only ones who can touch it now and things like that. And V's just sort of like staring up at it in awe. And then the second panel?
He's very nonchalant about it. He's like, okay, I hear you.
Yeah.
But what if I do the opposite?
Sticky fingers.
Right.
Sticky fingers.
Right? That face too. He's looking back at Tobias. Like, can he see me?
I feel like it really shows the Tobias being like his little like angel on his shoulders. That's starting.
Right.
And V's just can't help but be mischievous.
Yeah.
His Jiminy Cricket.
So yeah, I guess he goes and puts his hand up on the rock, and the thing I love about this is that it's covered in all sorts of different paw prints from the different creatures that inhabit the Marin continent, and so it kind of shows how they're all represented here, which I love. And he sort of feels a pull to that, I think, and you've conveyed that really well in this piece. And then can you explain the next few panels?
Thank you. Yeah, I think he just kind of throws caution to the wind, and he just wants to see for himself. And this is really where it becomes like wanting to make him feel small. So that's definitely like, I know that it's more of my artist rendition versus like the actual size of the rock, but he feels so tiny in comparison, and he's just getting these big messages, very conflicting messages, like to stay or go. Does he belong or does he not? And you can see in the last two panels where he takes his hand back. He's like, oh, what have I done? What was that?
Like he's touched something that burned him or something.
Electric fence.
And even Tobias notices too.
Tobias comes around, just chastise him. He's like, what did I just say?
Right, like only the champions touch this. And I think V in that last panel kind of is really regretting that decision to touch it there.
I feel like he doesn't want to be called out. He's like, yeah, like I already went through what I went through, like whatever, like don't rub salt in it.
I think it's also nice because like obviously being a D&D inspired comic, this really represents, I believe, a Nat 1 roll on a stealth check.
I think so, yeah. He got
that was
caught.
why Tobias was able to see it, is that he failed, and it was that whole kind of rogue messing up on a stealth roll being also more significant. And it kind of plays in the comic.
It's so great to know, like, from here on out, like, Tobias has such high insight that this becomes a recurring thing for this duo.
Can't get anything past him.
And it's just such a big contrast here in the different panels. It goes from like cold to hot to cold again. So can you give us kind of like your favorite part of this whole scenario?
I definitely like the facial expressions, but I have to agree with you where the main piece, the largest panel, is just showcasing how grand this encounter has been with the rock.
This moment.
So like I really like the impact of like the message, like these big words on the page.
Absolutely.
I do like that.
They dominate, and so it kind of shows that it's also dominating V and V's head at this moment.
It's a good way of portraying volume. I think is like a cool
very
way.
much so.
Thank you.
Because that's what it feels like to me. It's like it's instinctively like, okay, this is loud.
Yeah,
that's definitely, I think, where like, because I went back and like read through but I listened to like our recordings of the actual table play, and so I know this isn't like necessarily a 1-to-1 with what the rock looks like,
but it's an artist depiction.
It is very much like that's what I felt. Even though it wasn't my character, I felt at the table like this is grand, like this is bigger than him. So this is like the contrast of like small to large is like definitely what I wanted to convey.
Right. Plus, I think to Bogbean especially, it would look like a ginormous rock, right? And so I really like that you've conveyed it really well here. This not only that there's this conflict in that giant middle panel, but also that it's coming from inside V, because he's this outline right now in the midst of this glow. So you know that all of this is really coming from him. This is all occurring in V or around V. So it really shows that this is just his moment right now. I love that you've portrayed the emotion and the importance of the moment, something that wasn't really experienced by the rest of us at the table as players. It's so well in art form. I like that.
Thank you so much. I definitely wanted to put the spotlight here just because, like you said, like we hadn't really seen or heard a whole lot from V. And so it has been these story elements that have kind of pushed his story out so that, our characters are actually being like, okay, like, what is your deal?
Right? Like, who are you?
Yeah, I think a lot of this was, what I think is cool is like what connects me to this one is like, this was a lot of where the players knew more what was going on than the characters themselves.
Yeah.
And so it was much kind of a bigger impact because now it's like, okay, we know, but we don't know. So then it's like, it kind of shows in the thing where it's like, obviously you can see this is like V's little journey, but then it's like, well, when is this going to be revealed to the rest of everybody as well? Because obviously it's a big impact given the way that the middle panel looks.
It was a fantastic little like story pebble to kind of pick up later on, because this more so has to do with like Tobias, this like he's kind of like the tour guide at this point.
He's showing us around. This is his home territory, even though he's got his own issues with the mirror, and this is his home turf essentially.
Yeah, he knows the history. He's kind of explaining the importance that V kind of bypasses, I guess. He doesn't really care, but we see that he might have a reason to.
Absolutely. For me, my favorite part of this was just how well the conflict was portrayed. I know you really liked that it just goes down really quickly into like the fun sort of like, really, did you just touch this? But I love the big moment, I guess, is the pièce de résistance of this piece, right? It just shows so well. I think the contrasting colors as well in the different messages that are being given to V shows just how much of a war it is inside him. That it's two conflicting commands, right? You belong, stay, leave, come back. It's so difficult to be pulled in two different places at once, and this really showcases that well, I think. So that's definitely my favorite part of the piece.
I think mine is just more of like the little paw prints all over the stone.
Oh yeah.
As it's obviously those. I think it adds like more questions too, where it's like obviously if someone is watching it and doesn't know our story necessarily, it's kind of a cool little feature as to like, wait, why is it like that? And then it kind of plays even more into the mystery of the stone as well.
That's true. That's true. It definitely pulls
and
you
it's
in.
It's nuance. Yeah. It's just like we know exactly what it means, but someone who just reads it's kind of going to be like, well, wait, why are there? If it can't be touched, if someone's telling him not to touch it, why are there paw prints on it?
And if he touched it, why is it such a visceral response? It's so big.
Because he's obviously not the champion, or like how does one become
or at least
a
not
champion?
Yet that he knows of, right? Yeah. So this might be a call to him to be like, rise up and defend us, but you don't know, and we don't know yet either. So that's super fun. I think it creates a sort of mystery around not just the rock, but V as well. Mr. Captain V over here, mysterious sir.
Mr. Captain V, Mr. KG. But yeah, I really do appreciate the that the impact is of that like main panel is well received. Yeah, because I did go through multiple iterations of like, is this readable? Does this make sense? So I'm so happy that landed.
I'm glad.
But I will have to. Oh, sorry, not to cut you off.
Oh no, please.
I was going to like. The stone was actually I have to say I am kind of most proud of like the technique used because it does kind of come off as stone to me. So like sometimes that's kind of difficult to get to.
I do like that,
the grandeur of it and like just the texture that you're able to get, and like not that like the in the way that like the paw prints don't look like stickers on top of it. You know, they look like they're part of the same piece.
Absolutely. I think, it looks like it's part of it. The paw prints are all following the different angles of the rock, fitting into different places.
The distortions.
I really like that you pointed that out, because it looks very much like a piece of black glass or onyx sticking out of the ground that's been polished into this sort of like sheen. Which I find really fascinating and alluring in this piece specifically.
And I am glad that like I do try to keep these like simple. I've been trying to train myself to like draw simpler to kind of like keep the balance.
Pull it back a little and add as you go.
But I'm glad that like if I say so myself, I feel like the balance between the characters, like the textures don't necessarily take away from like the emotions that are being portrayed. Like you can appreciate the backgrounds while still looking at the characters and following their story.
Absolutely.
Rather than getting lost in it.
Right. And since this is a very V-centric comic, I think it really brings him forward as the main character as well. I think the simplicity isn't always a bad thing, right? Like it can draw attention just as much as it can be like, ooh, that's unfinished. So because he's in the middle of such a big cacophony of things, everything's calling to your attention, a simpler V standing in the center of this glow of whatever's surrounding him is actually the most calling focal point of the entire piece, because there is no clutter, there is no craziness. It's just the simplicity, the peacefulness that is just that center of V that's being assailed by all this craziness. And so you really get that picture, I think. I really like that.
Awesome. That's so great to hear.
Right? Like I said, simplicity isn't always a bad thing.
I'm training myself as a recovering perfectionist.
right. No. A perfectionist in recovery.
So I was wondering, obviously, like we've seen a few of these now. Like this one is kind of more unique, as like most of the frames tend to be almost the same size.
Oh, true.
But I noticed like this is kind of one where you've definitely accentuated the third frame to make it, or the third panel to make it a lot larger. Was there a reason for that?
I was trying to make it. I think this is one of the first comics where I've like kind of embraced like the longer page. So I'm like, okay, like instead
of
making
scrolling format,
more of like I guess how a web comic might be. So like it does kind of work with the way that like Ko-fi in like my gallery, it's able to like, you can check that it's a comic thing or a recurring thing.
Love the whole thing.
Yeah, so it'll kind of like put things in order.
I like that.
So like I was comfortable taking that approach, and I feel like I was like trying different composition styles of how to fit this like huge rock, but in perspective, but also making it make sense. And then there's these like messages that I want to have like a big impact for. How is that going to work? So I felt like I landed on this just because it was able to like balance out. And then in different formats, I could totally just snap it, you know, I could cut it into like 3 different pieces and it would still work as a cohesive comic.
Gotcha.
That's cool.
Yeah, I've got to say you've done a really good job, because that is a challenge, right? That leads me to some of the other challenges of a piece that's this detailed and this well done, is not just fitting in this giant rock. I think you're right. The scrolling comic, it sort of gives it that depth that you want. It gives it that massive look for the rock that you want it to portray, even if it's not exactly what it looks like. It just gives you that sense that it's ginormous, it's hulking over you.
Yeah, like it's still foreshortened as much as I can, but like it still is like this massive vertical thing.
Oh yeah, but I think I really like it. It tells a story going down. It kind of reminds me of manga, where there's just different panels. Sometimes they're different sizes. Sometimes it's a full page. Sometimes it's like multiple little tiny panels.
Yeah, I've definitely been trying to give myself the leeway of like, okay, like think a little more outside the box, like have things overlapping or like going in, like bleeding into other panels,
breaking
like
the boxes.
Like I'm trying not to give myself such rigid, because I do tend to think very rigidly, and I'm trying to like not have that limit my art in those ways.
Absolutely. I think one of the best pieces of advice I got from an art teacher was to just go and do some art with a couple of kids that haven't been to school yet, because they don't know what it is like to draw in the lines, and they haven't been taught to go inside the lines. And so they're much better artists because they can think outside of the parameters of the limitations we start placing on ourselves as we grow older. So I think that it's tough to push out of those boxes, but I think you're doing a really good job of breaking through those challenges.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's also really tough, I think, to depict something as invisible as mental confusion or mental turmoil, internal struggle, right? How do you put that on display for the viewer to see? And so it's really tough to portray that. But I think that you've done a really good job here. Can you tell us a little bit about how you incorporated that in this piece to portray sort of that mental struggle?
I think definitely I'm happy with where I landed on the like messaging, like this like I guess message or like vision from the rock. So it's like the two contrasting colors, and then the V's reaction afterward I felt was most important, because I could have left it there and it's like, oh wow, like what happens, like like what is this, what's going on, but like his reaction afterward is very like, oh, he was caught with his hand in the cookie jar. He doesn't know how to feel. And then his friends or his companions at this point are like, oh, what's going on? And he doesn't even have time to process it. So I do think that like the facial expressions and like, you know, including that little bit of follow-up after the big moment really helps.
I think it creates that like duality. It's like, is he more freaked out that he got caught, or is he more freaked out of what he just heard?
Right. And that adds a little bit to the mystery of the piece, I think, right? Is he just embarrassed, or is he truly just freaking out right now because he got this crazy message in his head? So I really like that sort of sheepishness, but you don't know exactly where it's coming from. And you know, it's so interesting too. I think that it's really tough to portray not just stone, but like stuff on stone, like paintings or like cave drawings and stuff. It's a little tough to depict the texture in a stone, and also keep that when you're overlaying like art or something on top of that to portray like a cave drawing or something, or paw prints on stone. So that's really difficult, and I think you did a really good job making sure to follow the angles and make it look like they were placed that way.
Thank you. I will say that the liquefy tool is my best friend, and the one of the main benefits of digital art in my opinion, and the like just choosing your brushes with intentionality. So like I chose something that was more of like a, like lately in general, I've been doing more of like a marker type brush texture. And I feel like that kind of already like it has like it's not like 100% opacity. So if you were like to go over again, it'll like build up the opacity.
Yeah, you can see it a little more.
I feel like that definitely kind of conveys that like almost like chalk paint kind of feeling that I imagine they're using to like imprint on this rock. And so I felt like that translated really well. So like finding that pairing, I was like, all right, let's go.
Right. That is a really good way to come like to that conclusion in terms of art and portraying that. I really like that. It's so interesting to see how you're growing, I think, as an artist, doing all these comics when we first started and incorporating not just more detail but more color as well.
I know it's been about a year now you've been working on these comics.
No, I can definitely see it, and it's really cool to like go back to the old pieces, and I'm just like, okay, like this is great and everything, but like now when I see like the more recent stuff, I'm just like, okay, like I can definitely see the little like blocks along the way where I'm just like, okay, like I'm being more efficient with it. Like there's like growth, but then there's also like just working smarter alongside that.
I think you should do that like on your 1 year of when you started the comics. Do the 1 year comic versus the one
comic,
the one you just finished.
Oh man,
and then just do a comparison.
Yeah, we should definitely do that.
Ideas.
Definitely.
January 1st.
We'll see. When we did release the episode for the comics.
Oh, true.
That is the one.
That's true. We'll see. We'll go back and check. Yeah.
No, yeah, that'll be really cool.
I'm down. Because, you know, it's really tough. You've gotten a long way, and incorporating all those details has gotten real good without losing the like overall look.
I definitely think for that, I do appreciate that. And what's funny is I'm thinking of the first two comics. The first one I put so much effort in, and it was kind of painted, and I was like, oh, I can't put that much effort in every time. And then the second one was kind of rushed, and I was using like a background template for like the ship setting, and I was like, this doesn't sit right
now
either.
You feel like you haven't accomplished too much.
So I'm just all like, oh man, like the whiplash of the learning curve in the beginning.
Finding your style.
Versus now it's going to be really satisfying.
Yeah, and it just feels like it's just gotten so easy for you to just do these too, because I see you like doodling in your Discord and stuff, and you're just coming up with like all sorts of different poses, different little scenarios.
Thank you. I'm glad that stuff is also enjoyable, because that's one of the things that's like the artist doesn't want to reveal is that the really ugly behind the scenes.
I'm just waiting for the 3D models and the anime and then all that coming up eventually,
Right. But speaking of all the challenges that you had to overcome, not just for this piece, but in general as an artist, I want to talk about a really cool new piece of technology that I found out about. That it
relates to Adobe.
Yeah, it can be good and it can
show.
be bad, but I think it can be a really good tool. It's called Project Turntable. It's an Adobe AI product. It's coming out.
Those are the bad words.
I think right now it's just been like shown as a sneak peek for 2024, so it's not even like an actual product yet.
Yeah.
But it's coming out. They showed a little demo of it. It's really cool. The presenter it was insane. It was like magic. He basically took a 2D image and turned it into a 3D rotatable object, so that you can get multiple angles of a 2D piece
that you didn't draw.
So you just built. Let's say you built the front portrait of something, and you just did the front. You know how normally you have to do all the turnaround portraits so we can get all the angles of everyone. Wouldn't even have to do that anymore. All you have to do is draw the front, and then you would just select that image and rotate, copy, paste, and you could just do all the different angles of it.
I do think it's useful as far as like the bones of the project, but like obviously there's still going to be, this is a presentation, they're trying to sell you something.
Yeah.
So
Right.
there will
It's a
be
product.
more redraws as far as like, what's behind there? Like it maybe predicted that it had scales, but it actually has different
Maybe it's
kinds
fur,
or fins.
right?
Yeah, something else.
Right. Like,
Or what kind of scales too.
Yeah.
now I do know that it uses vector imaging.
Yeah, you have
It's a
to use
little
vector
Yeah,
layers.
so it's not like you can just, put up your favorite sticker and it's
Right.
like, bam, it knows exactly how the back is made.
No, it has to be a specific way that you create the piece. And also, I don't think necessarily it'll be an answer to like every challenge in an art piece, but I think it'll help, like you said, with the bones of structure, because it's so difficult when you've almost finished a piece and you're like, ugh, this could have been at a better angle. I could have drawn it just like maybe just a turn more, and the angle would look a little better. And you can do that a little bit, but you have to like go in and edit it, and you have to really change. Yeah, you might have to change a lot of the piece, but this would make it like so simple to just go in, make these minor adjustments that you need, and be done with it, and not have to worry so much.
I do think that it's also like, it makes me think of like when I see other like artists online, they talk about like when you should ask for like your client, I guess, for their opinions or like their go ahead.
Yeah.
Like you should definitely ask what they think about the composition way before you have an entire painted thing.
A fully finished
Because
piece.
then you like go ahead and you're just like, actually, could you like change the
like
entire thing?
Yeah.
It's like, bruh, I painted this for like 5
hours.
hours.
Yeah, like come on.
Yeah, I mean, but imagine for like you were saying, those little small tweaks.
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
could
like a little
definitely
vector cartoon, it would come in handy for sure.
Yeah, or setting up your poses ahead of time and making sure that it's turned to just the right amount, so that what you're building on is the angle that you wanted, and you don't have to go back and worry about changing it later.
I definitely think with like common sense, like I guess fencing or like, borders around this kind of technology, like it can definitely be a big tool for artists to use, as long as artists are the ones doing it.
With everything, obviously, especially AI right now, there's a big issue of who's going to be using it, and will it be used for evil or good.
Yeah,
so I mean, obviously I'm a dungeon master, you guys are the artists. I mean, do you feel like this is like a good usage of AI, or is this just kind of like another way that this is taking away? I mean, what is kind of your each individual's take on like AI? Because like obviously Turntable was one, but then they also had one that was useful for kind of more of taking like objects out and correcting photos and stuff like that, which is all based on AI. I mean,
the Samsung phones have a little bit similar.
Right. So I mean, what is your guys' take on? I mean, is it just like, hell no, we won't go to AI, or is it just like there's a time and a place for everything?
Yeah, me personally, I think it's how you use it. So, these things shouldn't, in my opinion, be used to create entire pieces of art, but they can be helpful for taking care of things that take usually forever. Like, some would argue that digital art is a cop-out and a cheat because you're not doing the physical medium and the entire work, because you can erase.
Using brushes,
well, yeah.
special brushes.
You can undo in digital art. You can't really undo on a canvas. You have to paint over it or scrape the paint off, or you have to start from over because the canvas is much too, it would get too muddled. So, some people have argued that digital art, so there's always going to be people who are like, well, that's cheating, or that's a cop out. But I think it's all about how you use it, how responsibly you use it. There are going to be people who abuse it and who obviously try to say that they did art when they maybe didn't. And so that's always going to happen. But to me, it's always on I think, just personal responsibility there.
Totally.
How about you, EntLynk?
I definitely feel like AI is an affront to the human spirit.
I knew.
Point
I
blank.
was wondering if that was going to be your response.
Point blank. Like, I do think that there are usefulness in the tools, but the way that Adobe especially and other companies like it have been talking about it and kind of shitting on the artists that buy their products,
I getcha.
There's a disconnect there that it's like, okay, this doesn't feel like it's for us. I will say that this turntable stuff it's like the first thing I've seen
that's
that
actually
does
catered.
Yeah, it does kind of feel
Feels
like,
a little
okay,
more for us,
yeah. But in the big scheme of things, everything else I've seen is
more to circumvent our work, right? To replace our work, essentially.
And I have also seen that like AI has been used as buzzwords for companies when those processes have just been programmed by people.
Yeah. Or they're just automated.
Yeah, but AI is the hot buzzword.
Confusing it with,
exactly.
I mean, it's like the Amazon stores, that weren't actually AI, it was just people watching cameras.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think there's always like a little grain of salt that you have to put into things with the moniker AI on it.
To me, because I feel like it was always like, it's like a calculator, right? Like it does the work for me, but at the same time, I have to put the work in for it to even do anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's where
you have to give it data.
Obviously, as a dungeon master, I run into the same of like how much does dungeon masters use AI to build their stories, their characters, and it's like it's one thing to have like a name generator versus it going word for word.
Build the entire world for me.
Right? It's that same kind of thing, and I just was curious as to how you guys felt in terms of if that's acceptable or not.
I think it definitely shows. We're on two different spectrums, but I think that also shows how these sort of technologies exist in the world. There are some who view it really positively, some who are like on the fence, and others who view it really negatively. And honestly, it could be either one of those. AI could end up being a horrible thing that replaces all of our jobs, and then we don't have to do anything, and we become the people from WALL-E. But or it could be something great that's just a tool that we use that could be helpful. But it's about how we use it, I think, and time will tell.
I mean, like EntLynk was saying, this is what it is now. We'll see when it actually comes out what is actually required.
Yeah, or things that like as long as they're keeping it corralled, I guess, like as long as there's some legislature to protect artists. Like there's already I remember when it like was first becoming like a hot button thing and people were already putting into like voice actor contracts like, oh, like you're going to do this project and then forever we just own your voice and you won't be able to make money off of it. And it's like, oh, okay. So you're just harvesting free labor. But like, there's that weird disconnect where it's like, we want to crowdfund this thing, but we want to make all the money off of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that if there's like a little more like ethics conversation, it could be a good thing.
Yeah, I like that. That's not a bad conversation to have because we do need certain protections. There's been a lot where AI has kind of crossed the lines in terms of imposing itself over actual artists and their work. So I think there should be a line that is drawn and not crossed.
And I mean, I think this is also going to lead to potentially, I think you and I were talking about it a couple months ago of, with this oversaturation of AI and kind of becoming this, like, you don't know. I think things like live art streamers and people who actually use the real mediums are actually going to see a boon.
Yeah.
It's actually so funny you say that because in multiple conversations with my partner, I've talked about like the possible avenues for myself, and I had actually thought about going back to traditional art, which going back to something that was interesting that you said before, DNDWife was I had someone in my life who was like, oh, digital art is such a cheat and a shortcut.
Yeah.
But then they saw me doing it and they were like, okay, I buy it.
Right. That's
and then,
work.
Yeah. But then I started seeing like, there was other like artists online talking about like, hey, I'm a traditional artist. I'm going to come out and say it. Digital art is harder.
It's
and I
a
will
little
say,
harder.
Having done both, it's harder because it looks digital, like it looks flat almost.
Yeah, you have to work harder to make it look 3D, whereas on a canvas it's a little easier because you can work around with the different perspectives.
Like sometimes I don't understand how some digital artists can get it to look so painterly, and I'm like, bruh,
that's like the next level.
Next level for sure.
It really showcases the different levels of skill, but also like I think just technique. There's also just different styles too that everyone sort of masters. So I think maybe it might not be so much like that they're so much better. It's just that they've specialized in a different type. Like I love the way your art style is comic, but also it looks like almost like the children's books art that's just very beautiful. It's outside the lines. It's soothing. It brings you in, but it's not like scrawls. Like it's not actual children drawing. It's for this beautiful scenery that I love.
I really appreciate that. And you never know, I might have to find my traditional style again. You never know.
I think it would be lovely to sit and maybe showcase some physical art from you. I think that would be cool. But that's a wrap on today's episode of Comic Cave. We hope you enjoyed our dive into a lizard folk in Arnknoka, the sacred rock. Thanks to EntLynk for joining us and bringing this piece to life.
Thank you so much for having me back. It's always a blast sharing these behind the scenes details.
Absolutely. And hey, if you loved today's episode, make sure to join us on a Couple of Nerds Discord to see all the artwork and get updates on all things Extraeus.
And don't forget to leave us a review and hit follow wherever you listen. Until next time, keep adventuring and creating, nerds.